Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm Bennett Richardson, the General Manager of Protocol, and I'm excited to welcome you to today's conversation. In the past, you may have known Honeywell for products like the thermostat on your wall, which they don't make anymore. Over the past 4 years, Honeywell CEO and Chairman Darius Adamczyk has led an overhaul of the company focused on a new generation of solutions, including AI, cloud, and quantum computing. Protocol senior reporter and co-author of our enterprise vertical, Joe Williams, will lead our conversation with Darius today to learn what's next on Honeywell's journey. A few housekeeping notes. If you have a question, please hop on Twitter and tweet your question using our hashtag Protocol Enterprise. And if you haven't already, please sign up for Joe Williams and Tom Krasett's best-in-class enterprise coverage and twice-weekly newsletter at protocol.com/enterprise. Thanks again for joining us today. Now I'll hand it over to Joe to get us started. Joe, take it.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys all for joining, and thank you, Darius, for making the time. I'd love to just jump right in. And I don't want to spend too much time talking about COVID, but it was an area where Honeywell was obviously extremely active. You know, taking a step back, you look at the last year, you rejoined the Dow, you launched your quantum computer, you released several updates to it to make it more powerful. You acquired several companies, including Sparta Systems for $1.3 billion, which was the biggest acquisition under your tenure. You launched partnerships with SAP and Microsoft, and you scaled up production of critical pandemic response tools. I think you do 225 million masks in December alone, as well as parts for ventilators. At the same time, you had segments of your business that were impacted by COVID, aviation, real estate. And on top of that, you had to manage the response for Honeywell's own employees of how they were going to navigate COVID. That's an insane amount of accomplishments in 1 year. I mean, did you sleep? What did your average day look like? And what did you learn from just a year of chaoticness in so many different ways?
Well, thank you, Joe, and thanks for being on the show and being part of the group. Yeah, it was certainly an exciting year last year. There's no doubt about that. I mean, it's the excitement never stopped. And maybe just to add to a couple of those other points you added is our biggest business is aerospace. So that was probably impacted in a disproportionate way versus some of the other industries. And the other one was energy, which obviously is also another big area for us. We had a couple of businesses that were heavily impacted. So it was, it's sort of that old saying that says, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It actually was very true, because I'm pretty certain that if we can come through a year like we had in 2020 and emerge as a stronger, better company that continues to innovate and pivot and so on, and that certainly was kind of what I view as a bit of a test year for us. And I think there's something really important that came out of it, which is when the pandemic really hit us roughly about this time last year. I mean, March and April were kind of the two critical months in the history of the pandemic. And, we had to very quickly pivot and do some things differently, innovate differently, and whether it's stepping up production of these N95 masks, whether it's stepping up and having some innovations around healthy buildings, healthy aircraft, things that the world would need as it's both dealing with the crisis at hand, but also as it starts to emerge from the crisis that happened kind of starting Q3, Q4 last year. And now we're really emerging very quickly. And most recently, we've been very involved in the vaccination efforts, the mass vaccinations in partnership with our state government here, in partnership with Atrium Health and the Carolina Panthers, and kind of shown what's possible in terms of quickly and efficiently rolling out the vaccine. So, yeah, it's certainly been a interesting year, one that probably I learned more than most. And I think our organization, as painful as it was at time, I gained quite a bit from it.
Yeah, and I did want to touch quickly on the efforts that you guys have done around vaccination. You released a playbook of sorts, helping or educating states on how they can set up these max vaccination sites. What was the impetus behind that, and why did you want Honeywell to take a leadership position on helping states with this effort?
Yeah, well, it all started with a walk with some of my friends who kind of all live in my neighborhood. One is the CEO of Atrium Health, another one's the president of the Carolina Panthers, and we kind of thought, if we could pull together our efforts, expertise, and assets maybe we could show how we could do this vaccination effort faster and more efficiently. And we proposed that to both the state and the local government. Our Governor Cooper quickly embraced the effort, as did our Mayor Lyles here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And very quickly, we formed a partnership, kind of a public-private partnership that was highly effective. And we did a couple of events, one at the Speedway here in Charlotte, another one at the Panther Stadium. And just to give you a perspective how well it went, I mean, we basically administered a vaccine every 4.5 seconds. The average waiting time, including the 15 minutes that you have to wait after you get the vaccine, was under 30 minutes. And we were able to process 20,000 people in one weekend. And that's not going 24/7. So that's basically 2 11-hour shifts and 1 8-hour shift. So, this can be done quickly, efficiently, without wasting any vaccines. And we shared that playbook, developed a playbook with our partners, and then shared it with every state in the country. And hopefully it'll be used much more as more vaccines become available, and the speed and efficiency is going to become that much more important.
Yeah, we need you to tackle like the DMV or something next on speeding up and getting efficient.
Some things we can't solve.
And I want to transition to the what I think will be the meat and potatoes of the discussion, which is really about the digital transformation that you have been overseeing under your watch, turning Honeywell from this very legacy industrial manufacturer to a very software focused company. A lot of this is taking place within Honeywell Connected Enterprise. I read somewhere, I think it was your chief commercial officer said that the board had approved the plan for this effort in one day, which seems just outrageously fast for such a massive transformation. But I wanted to get a little bit of color around that. What was the pitch, and what led to the creation of this unit? And what did you see within the organization that gave you confidence that this was something that you guys could do successfOly?
Right. Well, the strategy goes all the way back to 2016, really, because I became chief COO of Honeywell in 2016, and I used that time back when my predecessor, Dave Cote, was still here to really formulate the strategy, to learn the business. And I felt that given that the one common fiber across all of our businesses, or just about all of our businesses, is we are basically a controls company. So whether it's controlling industrial plants, whether it's controlling aircraft, buildings, warehouses, that is the common technology thread against all these end markets that we play in. And when you're a controls company, you're obviously connected to everything. You're connected to all the systems in that building, all the systems in that aircraft, all the systems in that industrial facility. And my view was we used that data to basically drive controls, but we could use that data differently to drive energy savings, to drive efficiency, profit efficiency, safety information, and so on. We already collected all this data. So not just using it differently wasn't a big leap. It was kind of the natural next step for us. And that's really how our digital strategy was born, at least the external one. I'll talk about the internal one in a minute, but that's sort of how it all started. Then we put a plan together. Then we needed that to take a identity, which is the Honeywell Connected Enterprise. Then we need to attract talent. And we went outside and we attracted a lot of external talent, people with a lot of experience in software, digital companies, and so on. And then maybe the most painful step was to actually extract that business even further and give it much more control and autonomy over itself, while still having a connection to our major business units. So that's sort of the evolution. So I would tell you that my conversations with the board kind of evolved over the years, and it wasn't sort of, maybe one triggering event. There may have been one that says, okay, go implement this org design, but those discussions were ongoing from as far back as 5 years ago. I do want to add another really important point, which is at the same time that we created the strategy around external new solutions and digitization, we also did the same thing internally, which is refreshed our whole digital infrastructure, became much more sophisticated internally, streamlined our IT infrastructure, standardized processes, data architecture, underpinning IT systems. And by the way, we're still going through that. We're not done. But that was a very important effort that we went on this journey as well. So it's both external focus as well as internal focus.
Yeah, and you touched on one aspect of this transformation that I'd love to press a little bit on. It's a transformation that a lot of other companies are trying to make. You have been, one of the more successful kind of test cases around what living that mantra. Every company is now a software company. One of the biggest issues for a lot of companies is the cultural aspect to it. And when you're looking at structuring this Honeywell connected enterprise, something that is going to sit and function across pretty much every other Honeywell business that you run, how did you structure that? And what was so, you think, successful about the way that it was placed within the organization?
Well, there are a few things. The first one is, I think it's really challenging to say people who've been selling primarily products or solutions their whole career and say, okay, now go sell software or really promote software. It's a very different mindset. It's a very different business model. How you innovate, how you sell, how you promote, how you market is different. And I think one of the linchpins was you really have to go outside and recruit talent. And we did that, and we're still doing that, by the way, but we're, hired probably more than 1,000 people from a lot of the leading digital companies worldwide to come join us, including the leaders. The second one, which, I don't believe in the model of build it as you come. So it kind of has to perform financially. And I don't believe in a model where you just dump, hundreds, if not billions of dollars up front and hope good things happen. At Honeywell, we kind of have this mindset that you kind of pay as you go. And although this business does require investment, it's an investment that's sort of self-fulfilling, is that a lot of that investment comes from operating the business as it was, because it's not as if the Honeywell was nascent in software. I mean, we had about a $4 billion software business. Some of that was embedded, some of it was connected. So it wasn't completely nascent, but we extracted the connected part of it, which was $1 billion plus. And really that was the nexus of our connected business. So it was an ongoing operating business. So I didn't just say, hey, here's $1 billion, go create this IT stack, go hire a bunch of people, start from scratch. We actually started from something that was already ongoing, existing, and a good, profitable business. Now we expedited a bit of the investment, but it is an ongoing entity. And I think that approach enables us to have the rigor, the financial discipline right away to actually have it perform, not sort of in this build and hopefully good things will happen mode.
Mm-hmm. And to your point about hiring, I'm curious, if you look at Honeywell from a decade ago to Honeywell now, what has been the biggest change in the makeup of your employees? And is there one either position or one skill set that you think is now much more visible within Honeywell's ranks?
Yeah, I would say it's speed and lack of bureaucracy. I think we want to move quickly. We want to be agile. We want to be efficient, effective, and we don't want to be, slow. And I think we've achieved that. And, maybe every CEO says that, but I tell you why I feel good about me saying that and that being a fact. Because as I told you, a lot of people joined us from some of the tech companies, West Coast tech companies and so on. And they come into Honeywell and say, wow, you guys move every bit as fast, if not faster, at Honeywell than the company I came from. And I think that's sort of rewarding for me. Pleasantly surprised that, even though we're large, we can move fairly quickly. And then to give this even further, when we carved out our Honeywell Connected Enterprise business, they also operate under sort of different set of rules and controls and, not dramatically different, but different enough that they can make the decisions they need quickly and efficiently to really generate momentum, because I don't want them operating in the same culture as the rest of Honeywell. And I think that's really also been helpful. So that's really driven the cultural element in being different and approaching the markets differently.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the things when I talk to leaders of these kind of efforts, the need for that agile mindset is more paramount than it's ever been. And so it absolutely makes sense that would be something you try to ingrain culturally within that organization. A lot of the products that you guys are kind of building around revolve around IoT, or Internet of Things, which is basically sensors that are analyzing operations on a near constant basis and feeding a lot of that data in for analysis. It's been technology that has been buzzed about for a while, but has maybe had a slower trajectory or slower uptake than maybe some would like. Why do you think now is the time for IoT, and what has changed today versus maybe a couple of years ago when you were starting to hear a lot about it?
I think the expectations were a little bit unrealistic, because there's a little bit of a confusion between consumers and business or industrial customers, and the adoption rates in consumer offerings is generally greater. And there's a very good reason for that, is that your risk profile is just lower, because generally the price of that risk, and if something goes wrong, is predominantly inconvenience. We all kind of carry these things around, and when something goes wrong or your software doesn't work, it's annoying and aggravating. But you're not bringing down an industrial facility. You're not putting an aircraft in peril. You're not shutting down a warehouse. So the risk profile of the industrial customers that we serve is just that much higher. Thus, the adoption rate is going to be slower. And I think we should expect that. I mean, it's accelerating, but we shouldn't expect this exponential curve necessarily, just because there's a greater level of risk when you're risking billion-dollar facilities, operations, business units, and so on. And you have to do proofs of concepts. You have to demonstrate the value. You have to demonstrate the ability to scale. And then you have to demonstrate the value on a broader scale. And then you have to upkeep it, enhance it, and improve it. And that's going to continue to be a limiter in terms of the pace of the rollouts. And, we see it accelerating, obviously, but it's never going to be at the pace of, kind of B2C type of businesses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I did want to ask, you the last couple quarters, you have seen, year-over-year declines in some of the revenue. And I know that part of that is due to the COVID impact on the business. But in terms of your vision, I mean, when does the ship fully turn around, and when do you think you start to really reap the benefits of all the investments that you made over the past couple of years?
Yeah. Well, I would say we already are, because if you look at our software business, despite two of our biggest markets being down substantially, our software business grew. And, the aerospace markets were down 20% plus. Energy were down double digits, and our software business grew. So I would argue that's a proof point of the fact that our strategy is working. I think as these markets recover, particularly as we see vaccination rates going up quickly here in the U.S., I think I'm pretty optimistic and bullish on the second half of the year here. And I think people are going to return to travel, or people are going to return to the offices. And obviously that's going to be not just boost the economy in general, but really disproportionately help our businesses. And you sort of couple that with even more interest in a lot of the IoT solutions, because frankly, the more digital you were in this crisis, the better off you're going to be. Then I'm highly optimistic about sort of double-digit growth for our software businesses for the foreseeable future, and that's purely organically.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, to your point, again, the sectors you guys work in, very industrially heavy, sectors that do not want to move quickly into massive digital overhauls because they could have severe ramifications for their plants, their operations, their facilities that are very manufacturing heavy. You have this vision of being a system of record for industrials, and it's in a space that is getting competition from others out there, legacy software providers like SAP that are very heavy in the industrial segment. Where do you view, I guess, your solution or your effort in this space as different than, again, some of those legacy software providers that have been at this for decades?
Yeah, I think there's a very clear answer to that, which is a lot of those software providers play in the IT space. We play in the OT space. So there's actually no overlap between what SAP does versus what we do. And that's why we're actually natural partners, because our solutions play in the OT space, and the system of record is very much in the OT segment, not the IT segment, which is dramatically different. And there frankly is, a very different landscape of competition, and also natural partnerships like we have with SAP, like we have with Microsoft, because we can provide a complementary solution that's both IT and OT oriented.
Yeah, the partnerships, were a big deal. A lot of the kind of experts in the industry that I talked to highlight how it really was a validation of a lot of Honeywell's efforts this past year, that you were able to form partnerships with companies like SAP and Microsoft that are industry leaders. What was why did you pick those two companies specifically to pursue a partnership with, and what can we expect on the partnership front moving into further into 2021 and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, I think as many software digital companies have proven, that to be successful, it's not a single solution, and I think partnerships are part of the growth equation. And SAP and Microsoft were natural partners. I would say that we've also have a lot of good partnership efforts with Salesforce as well, more on the front end of the business. And there's a very simple reason for that. Is number one is our strategies are complementary, and that has to be true, because if it's not true, then you're really competing and you're not partnering. And two is we've had a very good working relationships with all these companies. I mean, we're customers, in some instances, customers of each other's. And that's still important, and we're innovating together, that's also critical, because if you're just kind of putting two things together without putting dollars into innovation, then I don't view that as a true partnership. And I can tell you, in the three examples that I just gave you, we very clearly are innovating together to create unique solutions between those partnerships.
And any hints on what we should expect from future partnerships?
Well, yeah, I guess I would just leave it at we should expect more to come. It is very much part of our strategy. And, maybe I'll just give you another example. Maybe this doesn't get a lot of press and attention, but, we have a very active venture capital fund for Honeywell. And we've made, and it's only been active 4 years, and we've now invested in close to 100 different startups throughout the world. And we offer something unique. I mean, every VC offers money, but what we offer, and why these partnerships, in some ways it's, we take an equity stake because obviously it just makes sense to create that bond. But for our venture capital partners, what we do is really provide a technical partnership. And then in many instances, we incorporate their solutions into our technology, or vice versa, or we help them develop their technology further, or we give them access to some of our customers. And that's just another way for us to innovate, because we don't have a monopoly on innovation. A lot of these new startups, particularly that serve the industrial segment, are so creative, and we welcome that. We don't view that as competition. We actually view that as an opportunity for cooperation. So we've been extraordinarily active in the venture arena, and all the companies that we invested in, we view them as our technology partners.
And one of the areas that I'd love to transition, that you have done some partnerships with some startups here, is in quantum computing. I'm curious, how did you start on this journey? Because I imagine you didn't just wake up one day and tell your engineers, go build a quantum computer, and that there was some sort of backstory on why you saw that this was something Honeywell could compete in. So what was the background on how this came about?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I got to give my predecessor credit for that initiation of that idea. But it really came about because with the trapped ion approach to quantum computing, one of the key technologies that you really have a great deal of expertise in is controls, because it's a very delicate system that requires you to have very strong controls expertise. And then we hired some quantum physicists, PhDs of sorts, and we sort of coupled our controls expertise with quantum expertise to really formulate this kind of startup. And, we're not that new at this. I mean, we've been kind of incubating this technology for about a decade. We've kind of brought it from behind the scenes about 2-3 years ago, but it isn't so new. And, and this year it's generating revenue. So it's now becoming real. And we feel really good about our technology. And frankly, we have the bluest of the blue chip customers, which are using our quantum computing today. And I think that the demand for a lot of those services and technology is accelerating. And obviously it's maybe not a traditional thing that Honeywell would be associated with, but I think that's looking backwards, not looking forward, because, we are becoming a much more of a technology company. The way I like to describe it is, we're a technology company that serves industrial customers, and and somehow we get lumped into this. You're an industrial. No, we're not an industrial. We're a technology company that serves industrial companies. It's very different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you definitely, you have industrial clients like BMW. You also have customers for your quantum computer like JP Morgan Chase. A lot of these efforts, though, at enterprises right now are pilot in focus, exploratory on how quantum can impact operations. When do you expect to see clients achieve commercial benefit from deploying this technology within their enterprises?
Well, the commercial benefits are incredibly large because quantum computers can solve problems that no other machines on Earth can solve. I mean, they'll have an order of magnitude higher computing power than any other computer. Now, we're not there yet, but we're not that far away. So it's, I expect that to be in the single-digit years away, and we already have functional quantum computers today. Okay, they're not, they're not the end vision. We're still progressing that, but we're already making it commercially available. So I think I would say 5 to 7 years, and maybe less, from being able to solve some very unique problems, challenges that were frankly unsolvable before.
And I know we're coming to the end, but I did want to ask, this will be a new business, not just for you, but for others that are also building quantum computers. What does the business around quantum look like? And how are you mapping out, how to sell this, what to sell it for, and how to create the sales team around this technology?
Yeah, I mean, I would tell you that we're kind of very much in the first inning of that. I mean, the commercialization of quantum offerings is brand new. I would tell you the business model is evolving, and it's anything from taking a portion of the benefit that the quantum computer takes to service fees to leasing of time, and I would say we're not being rigid with our business model at the moment because it's not the time to be rigid. Because we want people operating on and really testing the quantum capability and so on. And the business model itself is still evolving. So I think we haven't really locked in on one, and we're trying to maximize use and access at the moment.
And I did just want to ask one last question. It is a very burgeoning technology that saw a lot of progress last year. It's also one that, as this technology has advanced really quickly, the hype has really followed along. And you have a lot of companies out there, kind of laying claim to the world's most powerful computer. And Honeywell has been a part of this. It's the most recent update that you guys put out. I think you labeled as the highest performing quantum computing system in the world. Why is that marketing battle, do you think, so important? And how do you make sure, I guess, that this hype doesn't oversell the technology and where it's at now in a way that could, either dissuade or raise questions about just how impactful it is?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to communicate when you're the technology leader, and I think that it's really important for current and future customers. And obviously, they want to be engaged with whoever's leading in the industry. That comes naturally. But I think maybe the best way to put this is, if you want testimonials around which technology is leading, go talk to our customers, because many of them have really experienced a lot of the other technologies, and they've really come to Honeywell to really continue to practice the art of quantum computing. And you don't have to take our word for it. You can talk to the industry and some of the customers that are out there who have experienced various systems. And we feel very, very comfortable about our leadership in this area. And by the way, we're far from done, and the race is far from over. So this is going to continue to evolve, and we're going to continue to invest and progress our technology. So, I don't want to sound arrogant, but just because we're leading today, that doesn't mean we're going to lead at the end. Although I'm very, very confident that given our focus, expertise, and level of investment, we're going to continue to be the leader.
Yeah, it'll be a fascinating industry to watch, and fascinating as well that the major competition is between, I think, the folks most people would expect, and then Honeywell alongside the Googles, the Amazons, and the Microsofts of the world, which creates a very interesting competition, I think, for those who are maybe used to those 4 or 5 companies competing against themselves most of the time.
Well, I think that this goes towards the opportunity that I think people probably define Honeywell a little bit differently than they should have in the past. Maybe we're actually the same. It's just that we weren't defined appropriately.
Well, thank you so much for the time today. Really appreciated the chance to talk to you and learn a little bit more. And I'm sure we'll be talking again in the future as you continue on this effort to become a software powerhouse. So thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, Joe. Enjoyed our conversation today. Thank you.